Sorry, boys. I have some bad news.
Uh-oh.
You're right, uh-oh. Your show is old. Nobody listens to it anymore.
I don't think anybody listened to it in the first place.
And that's why you're all fired. Later, boys.
What?
Good news, boys.
Uh-oh.
You're right, uh-oh. People are clamoring for your podcast, but they don't want new episodes. They want old episodes. But not old episodes. They want new old episodes.
What?
So we can just re-air old episodes and call it good? Also, didn't you just fire us?
Clearly you haven't even been listening. You should learn from Robert over there. The mind of a genius. Now get to work cooking me up some fresh classics. Later, boys.
I'm just going to pick an old episode and re-air it.
You better not.
Hello, and welcome back to the Retro Odyssey. As usual, I'm your host, Ryan, joined by my other hosts, Matt and Steven.
Hello.
Hello.
How was this last month treated, everybody?
Well, I ended up getting quite a lot of new pets. I mentioned in the last episode that I had like 2 spare enclosures after I'd moved my tarantula Shiva out of one, then moved her out of that again, just because they weren't kind of like really appropriate for her. So I now have a very, very tiny new tarantula called Garuda. I'm going with like the Final Fantasy summon names. She is a Trinidad Chevron, which is, as you might be able to guess, from Trinidad. And she is very small. She's about the size of my thumbnail. Well, I say she. I mean, there is no way at that age to be able to tell what the sex is. But yeah, she is currently in the smaller enclosure, and the bigger enclosure now has 9 Horrid King Assassin bugs in it, which are even smaller than the tarantula.
They won't kill each other?
Oh no! They don't cannibalize on each other.
I've never even heard of this.
The name sounds like they're from Dark Souls, and they look like they're from Dark Souls as well.
Yeah, they really do. Holy crap.
Mine are really, really tiny in a minute. I actually expected them to be a little bit bigger, but yeah, they're really tiny. I ordered 10. One unfortunately didn't make it, so I have 9, and they're in this really massive enclosure. I'm just hoping that they're able to find food in there. There is a lot of roaches in there with them, but I think the roaches have hidden. Chucked a few like mealworms in there as well. So I know one of them is definitely eaten because I saw it take down a roach twice its size.
Jeez.
But they are like absolutely vicious.
What are you going to do next, Matt? You going to get yourself a centipede?
No. Centipedes creep me out.
Good, they have too many legs. And they're too angry all the time.
The only reason I got these is just because I had 2 spare enclosures, and I didn't want them just sitting around.
Right.
So I'm not planning on getting any more at the minute. But yeah, that'll do for now.
I've watched plenty of videos with people who keep tarantulas, and they always end up having like 30 tarantulas.
Yeah. I've not got the room for that, unfortunately.
I think this is probably why, because of they get the wrong enclosure, and then they've got, well, I've got a spare one. I might as well get another. And just keep multiplying them. My month has consisted of work.
Shit, I feel that, though.
Yeah. Basically just been working. My wife and I did go up to the mountains for her birthday, which of course, because things are tight, we used my mom's timeshare thing, and 0 out of 10 would not recommend.
Oof.
Were misled on the room we were booking and got spam calls in the hotel room, and the internet kept dropping out.
Well, you said it was a timeshare.
Yeah,
Your mom has a timeshare in a hotel?
it's like it's like a condos kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote unquote resort that we got pushed into, like, the room was a slightly bigger hotel room. Like, it's not what you would normally expect from a timeshare. It didn't feel like a condo. It was 2 rooms and like just we definitely feel like we were misled because, the floor plan we clicked on was not the one we got. But since it's her timeshare thing, we're like, okay, we'll just, leave our feedback and, whatever. We'll just not go back there.
Next time you go out to the mountains, you'll do it like real Americans. You'll build a log cabin in the woods.
We're talking about going back down to the Blue Ridge Mountains for our anniversary. And since that's most of a year away, we have time to save up for it.
Very nice. My month was pretty uneventful. I got hit with that storm that crushed through the Midwest. It wasn't too bad. I did get snowed in for a couple days, which was, I don't know. I don't like not being, if I'm supposed to be at work, I don't like not being at work unless I have scheduled that time off. If it's an abrupt, you're not at work now because you can't go to work, you're sick, you're snowed in, your car broke down, I get antsy real fast.
That makes sense.
But that cleared up. My heart goes out to Texas. They got screwed over real bad. That's a bad time down there.
Yeah, even worse than it normally is just for being Texas.
Yeah, and yeesh. And I only lost power for like 20 minutes because they were doing rolling blackouts here in Oklahoma just to make sure that the grid didn't go down, because if they hadn't, they were risking the grid going down. So they did rolling blackouts. I got hit for about 30 minutes, and then that was it. Didn't lose power ever again.
Yeah, I'm in a lot of tarantula groups on Facebook, and there were a lot of people there from Texas who had said, like, because all the power, all the heating had gone out, that they'd lost like quite a few tarantulas.
That sucks.
And yeah, because it was like just too cold for them because all the heating had gone.
Oh yeah, I got cold as hell. That storm brought, I don't know about Texas. I know they hit negative digits, but we got down to like negative 10. I haven't seen temps like that since I lived in Alaska.
Right. See, here on the coast, we didn't get anything. Like, none of it. I don't even think we got down to freezing temps.
So you didn't miss out on anything.
Which is good, because I really can't afford to miss work because of snow.
Right.
So has it all passed now then?
Oh yeah, there's a couple little spots you can still maybe... I don't think it's all gone now. I don't even think there's any snow built up anywhere. I know the other day I saw a little tiny, itty-bitty mound of snow where it had gotten plowed and pushed out of the way. But it's probably gone by now, especially since it rained a little bit. It's been... yesterday, I think it hit like 60. Almost 70. I know Texas has already seen like an 80-degree day.
Yeah, I saw something on Twitter. It was like, we're just going to wear shorts today and pretend last week never happened.
Anyway, that was my week. I played a lot of COD. Which is weird, because I don't really play COD, but I started playing Cold War. And it's okay. It's okay. It's mediocre. It's not a very good COD game. I don't know why I continue to play it.
I know, I haven't... I'm trying to think the last time I actually played a Call of Duty. Probably when I was in college, and I was playing one of the original Xbox titles that was in a big batch of games that I got.
Back when COD was decent.
Yeah, I want to say it was like the big red one was the one I had. I don't know. I don't
know why I thought Big Red One was a Battlefield game, but now that you say it, I'm pretty sure it's Call of Duty.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not super big on the military shooter to begin with, so it just COD's never interested me.
I've never been able to get into military shooters. I played one COD game when a friend brought it over once. I think it might have been number 4. It had kind of like a grayish, orangish looking cover.
Do you have the slightest idea how little that narrows it down?
I think it was a PS2 one, but I played like half an hour of it and just wasn't feeling it. Just military shooters just don't really do it for me.
Yeah,
I like fantastical elements in video games.
yeah. I mean, at least give me some sci-fi shit.
I got into shooters with Halo. Like, I really got into them. Like, I had played like Perfect Dark and I had played GoldenEye, but it was like Halo hitting. Oh my god! And then COD's like, look at me, and I'm like,
no,
but no, no, I won't.
See, Halo was actually my first-person shooter. I think it was when I was in high school that I played it. But yeah, like I didn't play GoldenEye or Perfect Dark on the N64. Halo was the first one I played because I don't even think I'd played Doom. So I was like, okay, this is weird, but it's space, so I'm kind of into it. And then Halo 2 came out and was really good.
So is that all you've been playing this month? Just COD?
I played Little Smash. Sephiroth released, I think, beginning of the month or end of last month. He's an interesting character in a Smash, but I haven't really given him a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I gotta pick up the fighter pass.
I want to double back really quick because I just said GoldenEye was probably my first, and I got into it with COD. GoldenEye was not the first shooter I played. The first shooter I played was Chex Quest. That was the first shooter I played, and then it would have been GoldenEye. I fucking love Chex Quest. I'm so glad that I got an HD remake on Steam. Anyway, yeah, mostly played COD, played a little Smash. I feel like there was something else I played, but I didn't play much of it if I did. Oh, I've been filling out the map for my wife on Wind Waker HD, slowly. So, sail around, find the fish, give them bait, and go to the next square. Mm-hmm. Super engaging gameplay. But that's basically been it.
I mentioned last month I'd gotten back into Kingdom Hearts and started going back to clean up some of those platinum trophies on PS3. And I'm still doing that. And at this point, I have played at least some of every Kingdom Hearts game except the original in the past month. Well, and the new one that just came out because I don't have it yet. But yeah, it's been a whole hell of a lot of Kingdom Hearts here. And then I also started The World Ends With You again. Since I figure if we're getting a sequel and an anime and everything, I might as well get through that.
That game was so good on DS.
Oh, it's really good.
I heard that the Switch version is a little sad.
So from what I understand, it's not as good, and people that have it have recommended handheld mode, which is not super great for me because I don't play in handheld mode as much. But the general consensus that I've heard is play the DS version. Like it's kind of a pain in the butt to track down, but it's worth it.
What is it? I've not heard of it.
Okay, so it's another Square RPG. It's very, very Japanese. Like it takes place in Shibuya. So you have two characters that you control. One on the bottom screen with the touchpad using a stylus, and the other one on the top screen using the D-pad and the L button. And it's basically a thing where the combat goes where you do an attack with one, it passes a little ball of light to the other, and you're supposed to basically bounce back and forth between them to get higher damage and get through fights faster and stuff. It's a very cool mechanic. It just takes a little bit to get your head around. And the game even says, if you're struggling, focus on the bottom screen and you can set it up so that the top screen basically goes by itself after 1, 3, or 5 seconds. And the game recommends if you're struggling, let the top screen run by itself and just focus on the bottom screen until you get the hang of it. And you get different elemental attacks, and you basically do different maneuvers. Like the fire attack is just drawing around on the bottom screen to make a trail of fire. The ice is you draw a line up and a big icicle comes up. It is a pretty engaging game, and it's got a good story that I have not seen all of. Tetsuya Nomura is involved in some way. He's a producer, but it's very clearly Nomura designed characters.
There's not a lot of games that have you controlling 2 characters at once. The only other one I can think of, obviously aside from strategy games, was Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which you play with. They recommend a 360 pad, and it's a platformer where one character is controlled with the right stick and one character is controlled with the left stick.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to kind of cooperate the 2 characters together to get through some puzzle platforming, and that was a really good game actually. But I can't really think of any others where you have 2 characters that you control at once.
The Brothers threw me for a loop with the controls. I don't know why I was having struggle with it, because I was enjoying it. But if one of the characters, if they flipped around on screen, it starts off, one of them is on the left stick, and the character on the left is on the left, and the brother on the right is on the right. And if they flipped around, I got hella confused. My brain just couldn't process it.
Just spinning in circles.
Yeah, and I got so frustrated with me not apparently being too stupid to play the game that I stopped playing it. But up until then, I mostly enjoyed it, except for when they got flipped around.
Maybe you had kind of a different version of the game to me, because constantly one character was on one stick and one character was on the other when I played it.
Oh no! See, that's the thing, is they were bound to the sticks. I'm saying if when I start out on a screen, brother on the left is on the left stick, and he's also on the left-ish side of the screen. Brother on the right is on the right side of the screen. If they swapped places on screen, my thumbs just went, okay, well, the left character is going to be controlled by the left stick, even though that's not how it works.
Oh, I get it, yeah.
It was a problem with his brain, not with the game.
Yeah, the game was fine. My brain just wouldn't follow up on it. And it's a shame.
I've not played Brothers. I've heard about it, but I never actually got around to playing it. But yeah, the World Ends With You is actually it's a pretty good game. It's very, very square, very Japanese, and as of 2012, involved with Kingdom Hearts. So that's kind of one of the reasons I jumped back in.
I mean, you can look at the art style of The World Ends With You, and
well, yeah, because it's
the same guy.
Yeah, because there's the artists are Tetsuya Nomura and then one other guy.
Now that I'm looking at this, I always thought maybe the giant shoes was sort of a Mickey Mouse reference, but now I'm just thinking he draws giant shoes.
It's just a Nomura thing.
And it just so happened that he went, well, if he's going to have giant shoes, I might as well make him look like Mickey Mouse shoes.
Right.
But speaking of Nomura and Square and such, I finally managed to get into Final Fantasy VII again. I didn't play it at all last month. But I finally got time to get back in, and I am currently just past the Gold Saucer, where you get the buggy, and you can kind of move around the world map with the buggy. That's where I've saved. I've not gone any further than that yet, but yeah, I've been having fun because, as I mentioned previously, I did kind of go back to the start and start going through it with a guide because I missed a load of stuff. So this time through, I did go through. I did the Fort Condor stuff. I got Yuffie, and got all the missable stuff that you can steal off enemies and stuff like that.
Like laser.
Which one's laser?
the bull motor in the desert under Gold Saucer, like you can only get it while you're down there in the prison. And
no, there is. You can get it from Harpies later on, according to my guide.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't because it said that they're going to be kind of like quite tough at this point in the game, but a little later on you can get it from Harpies. So that's what I did. I mean, I did get the one from Midgar Zolom. I managed to kill Midgar Zolom and get the one from him.
I never thought to use that exploit, so now I'm gonna have to try that when I go back to 7.
Well, I didn't use an exploit. I just used a limit break, which just happened to give you invulnerability for a few turns, and you've just got to use it at the right point.
Yeah, it's not really an exploit. It's more of a sound strategy, but it's something I had never even considered.
Yeah.
Like, even the official strategy guide tells you, don't mess with the Midgar Zolom right now.
I mean, it took a fair bit of grinding. I had to grind enemies in the cave for about 30 minutes, which, to be honest, it isn't that long.
Yeah, but that's not bad for getting beta that early. Beta is huge that early.
Oh yeah, the when I got to Bottom Swell, 2 betas took it out.
Oh yeah, I would think so.
But yeah, I am having fun with it, and I'm glad I've got back into it. The only other thing I've been playing this month, apart from like my usual stuff, is a game that Adam recommended called Dicey Dungeons, which actually came out like over a year ago, and it is a roguelike RPG dungeon crawler, but you play as kind of like a die, and it's got all these cutesy character models and stuff like that. It's a really charming looking game, and you battle by rolling dice and putting the dice. You have kind of like items, like your sword is kind of like just put a dice in here and it'll do that much damage. You've got a shield where if you put in an even number, it'll give you a shield. If you put an odd number, it'll do damage and stuff like that. And it's a really, really engaging roguelike game, and it was really cheap as well. I think it was only like £3.50 or so I paid. And I believe it is about to come out on Switch.
It sounds like a game tailor-made for me, so I plan on picking it up on Switch when I can.
I mean, with the price it is on Steam at the minute, I mean, if you're not sure about it, it might be worth picking it up on Steam just to see if you like it.
Oh, no, I am certain on this one, because, like, I'm in a DICE group on Facebook, and they brought it up. It is currently available on Switch. But yeah, I mean, like, roguelike dungeon crawler, RPG, like, it's perfect. So I would much rather have that on Switch, even if it is super cheap on Steam. Plus, yeah, I'm so busy with other stuff right now. Like, damn.
Yeah.
To be a child again and have infinite time for games.
But yeah, that's all I've played this month. So shall we jump into the news?
Sounds good.
Okay, so the news. We've got quite a lot of news this month because we had a Nintendo Direct, we had a PlayStation State of Play, and we had a Pokemon reveal as well. So we'll start off with the Nintendo Direct. The PS1 Legend of Mana game is coming to Nintendo Switch.
Hell yes.
A bit of an odd choice, but I'm not mad about it.
I will be ecstatic if I can get the entire Mana series on the Switch.
I saw that when I saw that announcement, I was just like, oh, Steven will love this.
Yeah, like I don't have a physical copy of Legend. I do have the PS1 Classic version from PlayStation. But I will absolutely buy this again because, I would love to have everything on Switch. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super into the Mana series, but I know you are.
I'm very excited. And I acknowledge that. And the thing is, like, Legend is, I want to say Legend is the last one done by the original creator. I don't remember off the top of my head. But it's definitely where the series changed. And a lot of people say that's where it got bad. I haven't played most of the later games, but I know I'll probably enjoy them to some degree.
Graphically, it looks really nice, the remake.
Oh, yeah.
And also in the Nintendo Direct, we got another remake, kind of a little bit outside of our normal retro range, but Skyward Sword HD is coming in July.
Well, I think officially now that is in our retro range.
Well, I think we decided on 15 years, didn't we?
Did we just decide on 15 years? So,
yeah, I think 15 years is a good range to work with. Which, I mean, it'll be there pretty soon.
yeah, it's at 10 years right now.
Yeah,
I felt that was a really odd decision for them, personally, because there are other games that you could have done to celebrate 10 years or 35 years of Zelda.
Well, so here's the thing.
Instead, they went with Skyward Sword. I know Skyward Sword is like the beginning of the timeline and all that jazz, but I felt there were other options.
To me, it's one of the only ones that made sense because we've already got Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask remakes, so that takes the N64 off the table. We've already got Wind Waker and Twilight Princess remakes, so that takes the GameCube off the table. The only things they could have done were the original Legend of Zelda or Link to the Past, in terms of the big titles that they want people to focus on. And, I mean, honestly, Breath of the Wild is a great representation of the original game style. And, like, Link to the Past, I imagine they're reluctant to mess with, just because it's so highly regarded and so well done.
Well, like, I get that, and plus, like, Zelda 2, Zelda 3, or Link to the Past, those are all available on the Switch Online. They're readily available, and they just did a Link's Awakening remake, which was
very good.
Just fucking, it was so great,
outstanding.
But like, you have the Oracle games. There's Minish Cap. There's there are plenty of the handhelds. Got a lot of games that now are kind of slipping into obscurity a little bit. And they're all quite fantastic. Honestly, what I was hoping they were going to do is they were going to re-release, make a proper release of Four Swords for Switch, because that would have made the most sense.
The problem is they just did Four Swords back in 2011.
The problem, I mean, yeah, but it was also a limited time release thing, and you can't get it now. And it was the classic, and that was a redo of the classic Four Swords, I believe, and not Four Swords Adventures that was released on GameCube.
Oh, so you're saying remake Four Swords Adventures?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, that would have been dope. I don't think they would have done it, just because like they really don't like the ones that are either Capcom or the that whole Four Swords like thing, like they don't seem to care about any of it.
I know, and it's a damn shame.
And I agree, like they were great games, but I kind of figured this is where they were going to go, because they put so much behind Skyward Sword. We got this freaking Zelda Wii Remote. They put so much behind it. I figured that was the next big remake.
I suppose it just seemed like maybe I was too disappointed in Skyward Sword as a game.
Well, and that's the big issue is Skyward Sword. Like, I would say Skyward Sword does not hold up compared to Twilight Princess, especially with Twilight Princess having the Wii U version, which you can play with a Pro Controller. Mm-hmm. So if people hate motion control, Skyward Sword is like the worst possible game because they forced it into everything. You have to recalibrate motion control every time you boot the game. So I get that, and I don't begrudge people that opinion, because I'm fine with motion control, and it annoyed me.
Right.
I understand that, and I think it's mostly a thing of, okay, we know people didn't like the motion control. We still think this was a really good entry. Let's re-release it like we did Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, and have the big celebration. The problem is they don't focus on the handhelds nearly as much as they should. What they should do is give us the Game Boy Advance online. I'm still not sure how they would do the Oracle games, unless they just ported the 3DS Virtual Console version. I mean, you look at some of the stuff we're getting. We got the Final Fantasy Legends series. We got the Mana series, which, Final Fantasy Adventure was a Game Boy game. It clearly is possible to make these Game Boy games work on the Switch. They just probably have to put in a little more effort than they want to for some of these games.
Well, I mean, Nintendo was allergic to making money.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, they could put those collections on a cart and I would buy it.
Oh, absolutely. With 100%.
I mean, also, there was a part, deep down inside that I wanted them to release, a 2D Zelda collection. And then actual remakes from the ground, because they're not huge games, proper remakes of Faces of Evil and Wand of Gamelon.
I mean, I'm content to let them stay dead.
If they had just had someone, and don't we're going to remake this to look like a modern Zelda game, modern Zelda art. Remake it so it's still definitely its own unique MS Paint or hand drawn style. It's meant to look more like a cartoon,
right?
But then fix what's blatantly broken in the game, so the games are actually playable.
Like the whole thing.
The whole thing. But so it's oh yeah, you have to grind out money forever for the rest of your life if you want to beat this game, or man, the hitboxes on this bird are 3 times bigger than the bird. Stuff like that. And I would have loved to see that.
Obviously, with this one coming out, they're not against the idea of remaking a lot of these games. And obviously, we have already had Link's Awakening as well. So they're not against the idea of doing handheld ones. So we just need to see what they do in the future.
Right.
I'll tell you what they're going to do in the future. They're going to ignore F-Zero for another 10 years.
Well, I mean, they're going to do that for the rest of time.
You know who had an anniversary last year? F-Zero. Not a peep. Metroid has an anniversary this year. I'm almost concerned that Metroid Prime 4 is just going to get shoveled off until the next console. I'll be real mad and shocked if they just glaze right over 40 years of Donkey Kong, though, this year.
I mean, we'll get a tweet.
No, we need Nintendo to return to Monkey.
We'll probably get a direct featuring known and confirmed cheater Billy Mitchell for the Donkey Kong anniversary, and that's all we'll get. But moving on from Nintendo, another piece of news that we got is Stephen mentioned a little earlier. Kingdom Hearts, one of the mobile games, is being taken offline.
Both.
Okay,
so the Kingdom Hearts mobile games are Kingdom Hearts currently Kingdom Hearts Union Cross and Kingdom Hearts Dark Road. I mean, they're both launched from the same app. Dark Road is the more recent one, specifically focusing on Xehanort, the main villain from the series. Union Cross is the big frickin', the one that's been running for a very long time. And in May, they are taking both of those offline. There will be offline versions available, although I think Union Cross is just going to be where you can watch the cutscenes for the story. Which honestly, for someone that has not played the mobile game, when you talk about the story relevant stuff in the mobile game, the mobile game is quest based. It's 360 quests before the most important character in the mobile game story shows up. You have to play that for hours upon hours to get to anything relevant.
That's RPGs for you.
Yeah, they're approaching I think they're in the high 900s. They're approaching Quest 1000. I think that's where the game is going to end. But the story is almost entirely in the back half. It's not that engaging to play. I've often said the Kingdom Hearts mobile game is the least fun Kingdom Hearts to play because all you're doing is swiping the screen to fight stuff, moving around, and then you do it again and again and again. And I've never personally gotten far enough in the mobile game to see the story. I've only seen the first 100 quests because it's just not fun to play. So that's being taken offline. I think Dark Road, you can still play it once it goes offline. But at this point, the main people it was still being run for were the people who have been there from the beginning. The people that were doing the raids and stuff, there's a whole ton of content that if you haven't been playing for years, you'll never see. So
wait a minute, you said raid. Is it an MMO?
Kind of.
Oh. And I was winding up to make a joke about how Kingdom Hearts 4 will be an MMORPG, and then never mind.
Yeah, no, it's so weird. It's kind of MMO-ish. I'd say MMO light. The difference being that there's PvP stuff, and then there's big raid and Coliseum stuff, but you can only get to that stuff once you're at higher levels. So I've never personally done any of it, so I have no idea what any of it's like. But it's I'm not too broken up about it. I'm obviously gonna hang on to the app and record the story stuff just to have it. But I'm a little surprised because they ran it for this long and we're starting to drop. In the past few years, they started dropping big story stuff in there. But yeah, it's not entirely surprising that they're shutting it down. And at least they're making it still partially available. At least they're still leaving that story stuff where it can be consumed. Because it is, those plots are not resolved yet. So
well, don't worry, they'll cancel it, they'll get rid of it, and then they'll release it in Kingdom Hearts 3.3 Redux.
Oh my god, that and the worst part is we've already had a movie made out of the mobile game, and it wasn't even 100% stuff from the game. It was stuff happening in the background that the player didn't see in the game. But yeah, so that's happening. And then the same day that they announced that they're ending the Kingdom Hearts mobile game, they announced 2 Final Fantasy VII mobile games?
I was going to bring up that in a second, but Final Fantasy VII has had a load of new info on it because, according to Square, 7 and 14 are the only Final Fantasy games that exist. So we just keep getting more stuff and more stuff for 7. But the main thing that they announced in the PlayStation State of Play is a new DLC episode for Final Fantasy VII Remake for the PlayStation 5 version, which is coming out.
Hold the phone. How are you having a DLC pack when it's a 2-parter?
So I think it's basically I think they're adding some stuff, including Yuffie, to Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Is it a free update?
So
no.
Well, actually,
no.
Hey, hang on. If you have the PS4 version, you can upgrade to the new one for free.
This has been Sony's stunt for a second now.
If you do have the PS4, I mean, they didn't explain any of this very well at all, but I've seen several explanations of it since. If you upgrade the PS4 version to the PS5 version, you will still have to buy the Yuffie DLC. If you buy the PS5 version, the Yuffie DLC will come with it.
Oh, that's fucked.
Yeah, that's real.
But the main issue, I mean, first off, it looks fantastic. I mean, go and see the trailer; it looks awesome. But the fact that they're releasing a PS5 exclusive DLC for a game that came out on PS4 is really kind of shitting on the PS4 fans, especially since it's difficult to get a PS5 at the minute.
And especially because like this came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
Like put it on PS4 for fuck's sake.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you wouldn't have all the graphical improvements, but there's no reason that the DLC couldn't be on PS4.
All right, look, well, I shouldn't say that. I was going to say people that are playing Final Fantasy VII are not as worried about graphics, but yeah, they kind of are. The PS Plus free version of the remake is not eligible for the upgrade.
Oh, for
Oh
fuck's
my
sake!
god! Oh
Because
my god!
I was just going to say it's on PS Plus next month, but
Yeah, I'm looking at the announcement on Square Enix website, and it says, "Please note the PS4 version of Final Fantasy VII Remake available to PlayStation Plus members is not eligible for the PS5 digital version upgrade." Holy crap! Oh man, that's ridiculous.
They gotta fuck that one up.
that's kind of shit. I mean, obviously I don't have a PS5,
Oh,
but
that's
I thought to myself, oh, I'll get this on PS Plus next month, and
right.
when I do get a PS5, that means I automatically have the PS5 version. But no, guess not.
No, guess not. And I mean, it does say that if you have a disc version of 7 Remake, you have to have the disc version of the PS5 to upgrade that. Which, like, duh, that makes sense. Man, that is way shittier than they made it sound. Holy crap!
It's not the best. I mean, I saw a lot of very angry comment threads.
I am not
after this
surprised.
news.
Holy crap! Because all I saw was the thing about you can if you have the PS4 version, you can upgrade for free. You just need to have the disc version if you bought the disc. Oh, that's ugh. And then to specifically snub the PS Plus version. Oh, that's dirty.
I mean,
That's pretty shit.
Yeah, it's not the best.
Look, Final Fantasy VII Remake was my game of the year last year, almost by default. But like, damn.
But they didn't explain it very well during the presentations because some people thought that this was part 2 of the remake, which is not. It's just kind of like bridging the gap between 1 and 2, really, and just announcing Yuffie early because obviously she will be in part 2 because you run into her not long after Midgar. But like gripes aside, the trailer looks fantastic. The character design on Yuffie looks awesome, and it runs concurrently with the story of 7 Remake. So basically, this is happening at the same time.
Right. Basically saying why she was on that continent in the first place when you run into her, from what it looks like.
She's a strong, independent woman. She doesn't need to explain herself.
Yeah.
She will literally kick your ass.
Yeah. It says she's infiltrating Shinra. So I'm assuming it's gonna actually. You know what? This will probably elaborate on the war with Wutai. So yeah, that's cool.
I always found it fascinating how not just Final Fantasy VII, but Final Fantasy games in general, like I suppose they're all supposed to be relatively almost connected. Like they're the same universe, not necessarily similar concurrent timelines, but they're all the same overarching universe.
There is a multiverse theory. It's not confirmed.
But because I know there's been a couple references here and there. And that could just be in-house developing references, or it could be, the fact that there's connection. It doesn't really matter. But each game tends to build its own fantastical lore and history, and it's never fully explored.
And most of it is Star Wars.
Yes.
Yeah, like the most direct connection that exists between... outside of direct sequels like 10-2, 13-2, etc., the most direct connection between 2 differently numbered Final Fantasies is Final Fantasy X-2 has a character named Shinra, and then 7 obviously has the Shinra Corporation. And people are like, "Oh, does that mean Spira is actually, Gaia in the distant past. It's like, yeah, I think that's just the developers being cheeky on a game they figured not a lot of people would play.
Well, Yoshinori Kitase confirmed it.
Oh, did he?
That 7 is a sequel to 10. It's not on the same world, but it is a sequel to it. There is a theory about a multiverse, and it is apparently the same Gilgamesh in each game. Like, apparently it is canon that every single time Gilgamesh appears, it is the exact same Gilgamesh.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently the version of Noctis that appeared in Final Fantasy XIV is the actual Noctis from 15.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, so apparently there's an Easter egg in Final Fantasy VII Remake that solidifies this. Let me see. What is that picture?
Oh, it's a picture of the Shinra employees, and the guy at the front has the exact same mask that Shinra in 10-2 does.
Yeah, I see it now. Yeah, okay, so that, like, okay, so that's actual, quote unquote text in game. So yeah, that makes sense. Oh, okay, so the lead writer on Remake is really fond of the theory. So yeah, yeah. So okay, fine. Complaint withdrawn.
That isn't all that was announced in the PlayStation State of Play regarding Final Fantasy VII, because there are also 2 mobile games, Ever Crisis and First Soldier. Ever Crisis is supposed to be kind of like another remake of 7 that they're doing episodically through mobile, kind of like one new update a month, like one new chapter a month, which is apparently covering the entire Final Fantasy VII chronology, including the movies and stuff like that. And First Soldier is going to be kind of like a battle royale game about the formation of Soldier, and it goes into Sephiroth when he was younger. And I'm not quite sure how the battle royale mechanic ties in, but those are both mobile games that are coming out, which honestly I probably won't play, but it is interesting that they're doing a couple new games for that.
I might play Ever Crisis. I will not play First Soldier because I don't do battle royale games because I don't like competitive online multiplayer. So I'll probably just find videos that talk about the story of that. I'll probably play Ever Crisis at least a little bit.
But it seems like, as I mentioned earlier, they really, really love doing stuff with Final Fantasy VII, and there are other games that they could focus on. Like 5 and 6 haven't had a new version since PlayStation 1.
Game Boy Advance.
Oh, was there a Game Boy Advance one?
Yeah, there's Game Boy Advance versions of both.
But that's still quite a long time ago.
Yes, quite a long time ago.
1 to 4 got released on PSP, which isn't that long ago. But
yes.
5 and 6, it's been a long time. 8 and 9 got current gen remasters, and obviously the games after that, a lot of them had remasters, and a lot of them are more recent.
Right.
But 5 and 6, why don't you just acknowledge that they exist?
Honestly, I'm surprised we got 3 on PSP because, I guess we got 3 on PSP because we got the DS version too.
Well, I had to import that. There still isn't a physical release of 3.
No, but we did get the digital version and we got the DS version, which is basically the same thing. So we did get that. I was surprised we got it because they, for some reason excluded 3 from the PlayStation releases and gave us Chrono Trigger instead.
Well, and what's wacky is Final Fantasy VI is considered Final Fantasy III, Final Fantasy VI, depending on where you're from.
Right.
Is considered one of the best Final Fantasies.
Yes.
just hands down, it's considered one of the best, and almost assuredly the best of the classic Final Fantasies.
To the point that in Final Fantasy 13-2, there's like a battle arena thing you can go to, and one of the fights you can do is Ultros from Final Fantasy VI.
Nice.
Like they fully acknowledge that Final Fantasy VI is one of the most popular in the series, and they refuse to do anything with it. The problem is Final Fantasy VII made them so much freaking money, and the fans clamped onto it so hard, despite missing all of the messages in it. And so that's what they make, because that's what the fans want. And it's like, hey, there's people over here that like games other than 7.
It's ironic that like 7 is probably their most anti-capitalist game, and it's the one that's made the most money.
Yeah.
But moving on from Final Fantasy VII, we also had a Pokemon Direct, which I didn't watch, but I'm assuming you guys both did.
I did not.
I didn't watch it. I followed up on it and read some of the news highlights.
Look, I work second shift. My day starts at 12.
Yeah. But good announcement there with and I'm not even the Pokemon head here, but that's Steven. But an open world Pokemon game is basically what we've wanted always.
I am so excited. Like, this is going to be so good.
And I was like, I didn't watch the Direct. My friend told me, hey, because I was at work. He goes, hey, open world Pokemon game. And I was like, that sounds pretty good. I'm like, I'll take a look into that later. I'll probably get that one because I skipped like the last 3 generations of Pokemon. Well, not generations, but the last 3 installments. I got Pokemon Let's Go, and that was the only one I got since Oris. So it's been a minute. And he's talking about it, and it's like this, that, and the other. And then I went and watched the trailer the other day, and in one of the scenes that happens, I see my boy Garchomp, so no, I'm sold.
I love how they literally used that one shot from Breath of the Wild for it.
Yeah. They know what they were doing.
Yeah,
but it looks beautiful.
Oh yeah, it looks amazing. I'm very, very excited to have a game focused on Arceus, because I love Arceus as a concept. They have never explored it in the games.
No, they haven't, because Arceus popped up in
Diamond and Pearl.
Yeah, Diamond and Pearl.
So there was an event in Diamond and Pearl that you could not access because you had to have a special flute that was supposed to be given out at events, and they canceled that item because they thought it would be too complicated for players to use, despite the fact that it's go to a place and play the flute. So Arceus is in the code of Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. You can hack that item in and access it. And then there's an event in Heart Gold and Soul Silver that deals with it. But again, you have to hack Diamond, Pearl, or Platinum to get that Arceus. Right. Like, they had stuff built for Arceus that no one can legitimately see, and they've never gone back to deal with it. We thought they were going to with Sun and Moon, and then they didn't.
And I do like the concept of Arceus just kind of as a whole, because you have these... Like, Arceus was when they were just... Because you have your legendary Pokemon, they're super powerful, and they're demigods, essentially.
This one is straight up God.
And then Arceus is literally God. Literally, actually God in the Pokemon world. And he just... And people are so stupid. They're like, oh my God, this thing created everything. It's an animal, and I'm going to catch it.
Yeah.
If it's not human, it's a Pokemon, or it's a tree or a rock. And sometimes that's still a Pokemon.
It's both a tree and a rock.
God damn it, Sudowoodo. But yeah, so it is nice to see that, because again, it is an interesting concept for them to explore. But then they have even I've ranted about Pokemon before, but Yveltal from X and Y, I guess both. Like Xerneas is like basically a forest spirit. Xerneas can literally end the world. Well, Yveltal. Yveltal can literally end the universe and reset it. Like, that's intense.
Do you know what they are?
Well, I know that I didn't play X, so I didn't really get into the nitty gritty of what Xerneas is, but I know Yveltal is essentially the Phoenix.
No,
Only, and when I say Phoenix, I almost mean like X-Men level powered Phoenix.
no. So Ho-Oh is the phoenix. Yveltal is the eagle on Idrisil in Norse mythology.
Oh, is
It's
it?
yeah,
Okay, see.
it's the eagle that sits atop Idrisil.
Okay, and I'm assuming that in that mythology that it is basically a super phoenix, and when it dies and reborns, it takes everything with it.
Great devastation powers, the whole nine yards.
Okay.
But yeah, like so X and Y is very Norse focused because Xerneas is there's a deer somehow involved with Idrisil. And then Zygarde is the Nidhogg, which chews the roots of Idrisil.
Okay.
And
See, this is stuff I didn't know.
yeah. Well, and I'm very, very into Norse mythology. So like, I saw that, I was like, wait a minute. But yeah, Zygarde is the one that can end the world, which they actually did explore a little bit in the anime.
See, and that's what I don't get is like that was set up. They did X, Y, and then they were totally set up to do a Z, and then they didn't. Then they didn't.
I'm so upset.
I'm still
Like,
mad about that.
I'm still mad about that.
But speaking of games that got a third game, the other announcement was a remake of Diamond and Pearl.
Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl.
And then I'm wondering if we're going to get a remake of Platinum.
Well, and see, here's my thing. Number one, like, those names sound kind of dumb when you look at them, but then, like, when you think about it a little bit, like, they make perfect sense in Japanese because, like, that kind of descriptor tends to pop up a lot in Japan. And, like, what else are you going to attach to them? Like, they're precious jewels. The sparkle is, like, the main thing about them. So the names are fine.
The Shining Diamond, and
Yeah.
the Brilliant Pearl.
So like the names are fine, but
Yeah, no.
they
I don't
may
mind a problem. Well, because like Heart of Gold and Heart of Gold made sense. Soul of Silver didn't make any sense at all, but they were running with it. So
right. So there's that, but I'm not upset about it. But
no,
my question is, in the announcement, they made a point. They said all of the Pokemon in the original Diamond and Pearl will be available. Now, that raises a big old red flag for me because it's like, okay, Platinum added like 110 new Pokemon. So are they going to be in it? Is it just going to be Diamond and Pearl Pokemon? Because
it wouldn't be a bad idea for them to add a post quest that handles Platinum.
right. Well, and a lot of what Platinum added was new evolutions for Gen 1 Pokemon.
Yeah, so but if they took the time to add a post campaign with the extra Pokemon that showed up, they took all the Pokemon from Platinum and dumped them in there and then added the post campaign to kind of fill out the story a little bit. But they didn't go and make Platinum. It wouldn't make sense for them to go and make Platinum remake.
Right. And like I understand that. I'm just curious, like, are we going to have access to that extra 100 and whatever, or is it just like, because people have said that it seems like a straight 1-to-1 remake instead of the expanded remakes we got with the other remake games. So I'm wondering, like, okay, did they bring down the scope and it's just what you could get in those games, and you can't get everything like you can in, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, or Oraz. Like,
it's well, the other thing, the other problem is like, what are they gonna if they release a third one in a year for a Platinum? You're gonna have Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl and highly conductive Platinum.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I'm excited. I'm going to buy them, but I have questions.
I'm not too worried about it. All the remakes they've done in the past have been stellar.
Oh yeah, and like,
but now from what I hear, Game Freak is not handling the remakes.
Yes, it's being developed by what was that what was that developer name?
Someone I've never heard of before.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of them either. ILCA. I don't know who that is.
Neither do I.
But people have complained about the art style. I think it looks fine. Like I'm not upset about it.
It looks like the same company made Pokemon Home.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that.
Yeah, I never bought that, so I don't know.
Oh, I am.
Download that.
I have it, and it's it makes sense because Pokemon Home is kind of becoming the new hub for everything. So I guess that makes sense to work with them on a game and free up Game Freak to do stuff that's different, which I'm never going to complain about.
But if that's all we've got for the news, shall we move on to releases?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay, so game releases. Going to quickly dip back to February, which has one game that we didn't actually mention. Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, which came out a couple days ago, as of time of recording, is, as you might imagine, a HD remake of Ghosts and Goblins. And that has come out kind of in conjunction with the Capcom Arcade release, which is kind of like a hub on Switch to play a load of Capcom games. And you get 1943 free with it.
A good game.
The original Ghosts and Goblins is also a free download separately. And there are 3 separate packs, each with, I believe, 10 games each. I think it was about £15. I'm not entirely sure, but I did download the free stuff.
I'm gonna have to take a peek at that.
And I am
1943 is a killer good game.
Oh,
if you like
one of my
shoot 'em ups.
favorites. It's one of my favorite shooters. And I confirmed that I am still shit at Ghosts and Goblins because I went in and played that for a little bit. March releases. There's not a hell of a lot. Retro-wise, there is a new Crash Bandicoot game coming out on March the 12th. It's About Time, which we have mentioned on previous episodes. But yeah, I'm still impressed with that title. It's About Time because it is about time, and it's about time.
Yeah, Crash Bandicoot 4.
Yep. March the 26th. We are getting Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 for the current generation consoles, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S. And one that may interest Stephen, I don't know if you are actually aware of this because you've not mentioned it, but all of the Kingdom Hearts games are coming to PC on March 30th.
Oh, yeah. So I'm aware, but there's actually... So... This is one of those things where Square has been like pushing this on like Facebook and Twitter and stuff, and every single post is loaded with comments that are like, "I love this series, but I hate the Epic Store, so I won't be getting it," because they're Epic Game Store exclusive.
Yes,
which people are all upset about. It's like, y'all, Kingdom Hearts 3 was made with Unreal 4. Like, they have a partnership with Epic Games. They're gonna put it on their system. I'll be honest, I probably won't buy it because it's not like this is a physical edition, and it's they're all full priced, which that's a lot of money right now.
Right.
I already have most of them on PS4 as well, and I mean I'm not like major into Kingdom Hearts, so right. I'm kind of fine with what I have at the minute. I have 1.5 Remix, 2.5 Remix, and Kingdom Hearts 3. The only things that I don't have are 2.8, Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind, and Melody of Memory.
Yeah,
but I've got all the rest.
I have everything but Melody of Memory. I have everything on PS4. I can access all of it on Xbox One because it's all on Game Pass. And I have almost all of the original versions. The only thing I'm missing is the PS2 version of Rechain of Memories. So, like, I don't need the PC versions, especially to pay full price for games that I already own 3 and 4 times over.
Yeah.
and not have a physical edition. Now, if they put out a nice physical box, I might buy that, but doubt it.
So with the game releases out of the way, shall we move on to the main topic?
Sounds good.
Let's go. Well, speaking of a remake of Ghosts and Goblins, theme of this month is basically just remakes. And good Christ, have there been a lot of them. There have been remakes since... Well, I mean, I guess at this point it's really important to clarify what is a remake and what is a reboot.
And a remaster.
And then a remaster, because there are three key differences. You can look at Super Mario All-Stars and go, oh, that is a remade collection of Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, US2, and 3. Those are remastered games. They play exactly the same, but they're remastered.
Right, slight visual polish.
And then we can hop over, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, you can hop over to A Link to Link's Awakening. Link's Awakening HD, or whatever they call it, super fantastic game, is a remake. But it is a remake. It is a completely different style. It has some new mechanics in it, but overall the entirety of the game is the same.
It is a ground-up remake, but it's nearly one-to-one with the original game.
But it's nearly one-to-one, and then you have games that are less one-to-one, but they follow the story exactly, like Final Fantasy VII Remake. I would qualify that as a remake and not a reboot.
Yes.
Rebooting, as we will explore a little later, is when they just start a series over from ground zero.
Chuck it in the bin.
And then grab all the characters and make a new story out of it. Kind of like Super Mario Galaxy 2.
Really?
I consider Super Mario Galaxy 2 the alternative version of Super Mario Galaxy.
Huh. I never
because
thought
it completely ignores what happens in Super Mario Galaxy while still using the same fucking concept as a whole.
That's very true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah. Huh.
Is Super Mario Galaxy 2 really just its own galaxy? A bigger galaxy where Mario does his own galaxy stuff?
Huh.
While Mario in Galaxy 1 is doing his galaxy stuff? We'll never know.
Multiverse theory.
Yeah, right? In Nintendo, no less. But you get into that sort of jazz, and it's like, well, what are the differences here? There have been, obviously, the last trend for the past few years has been HD remasters. We've had tons and tons of HD remasters from DuckTales, which was super, super good. That almost bridged into remake territory because they added a couple levels.
Mm.
And they switched it up just a little bit. I would say they called it a remake or a remaster, but really that's a remake. It was excellent. Nintendo's been all over it since. I mean, they've been on doing that since the Super Nintendo.
Yeah. We talked about Dragon's Dogma. That had an HD remaster for Xbox One and PS4.
Oh, yeah. And what's super crazy is a lot of these games, a lot of them didn't need it. They didn't need remasters. Like, The Last of Us didn't need a remaster.
Absolutely not.
It didn't need a remaster. There was no point in a remaster other than they wanted to sell it again on the next console.
And I mean, honestly, I feel the same way about Dragon's Dogma. As much as I love Dragon's Dogma, it was fine on the 360 and PS3. It did not need the remaster treatment.
It didn't need it. And then you have other times where they remaster a game and port it, like with Mario Kart 8.
Mm-hmm.
That game deserved it, but only because the Wii U was a disgrace to that game, because the game is great.
Game is fantastic.
It was really good on Wii U as well, to be honest.
It was great there too, but the fact that there were like 3 Wii U's sold didn't do the game justice, which is why you're seeing a lot of Wii U titles getting ported over, because it needed the help. These games were great, and then people didn't get to play them. And Nintendo's like, well, shit, we made a gangbusters console. Let's get some of these games on there. Then when you get into remake territory, you actually see a lot less remaking just because it's not easy. And honestly, on some of these games, you're taking a really, really big risk on a remake.
Yeah, I mean, like Link's Awakening was a very safe bet, and it's because it's one of the most beloved in the franchise. It had already been re-released once as Link's Awakening DX, so they knew that the money was there. But like you said, it can be a risk because it's not always guaranteed that people will pony up for a game they already own.
But when it's done well, it can outshine the originals in some places. Like Capcom released Resident Evil 2 and 3 in the past few years, complete remakes. They're also kind of reboots at the same time because at the moment they are not really canon to the original timeline, but they are kind of like they follow most of the same story beats. But both 2 and 3 were fantastic. And I think that 3 is better than the original. I don't think 2 is better than the original. But 3 is definitely better than the original.
What's even more fun is you can get into a more recent, which this was a really confusing one for a second, was Doom 2016. Doom 2016 was simultaneously, at least in the moment of Doom 2016, it was a reboot and a sequel.
Yeah.
Because they weren't sure how well it was going to do if they just said, this is a sequel.
Right.
But since it did well, they came back and said, okay, Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal are not... These are decidedly not reboots.
Well, and
or remakes.
Within Doom 2016, there was a lot of stuff to tie it to other Doom games. It just wasn't explicit in the text. It was, hidden away in stuff you could read, but it was all there to connect it. They just didn't, they weren't upfront about it because, like you said, they weren't sure.
Yeah, they weren't sure. They played it super duper safe. So they played it. Where on the other hand, Doom 3, that cursed game,
tried so hard to connect.
Was actually an attempt to be a reboot.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, it's clearly not a sequel, but it's a reboot. And then after a while, they're like, it's alternate history.
Yeah.
Because they want to keep it canon, they just don't want to keep it mainline canon because it doesn't make any sense that way.
And nobody liked it.
And very few people liked it. My friend loves Doom 3. He loves that game. I don't understand. It is literally his favorite Doom game.
Sometimes as well, it kind of goes the other way, and you have remakes that aren't as good. Like, personally, I really didn't like the Crash Team Racing remake. I felt the difficulty curve was a lot different to the original. Plus, they added all the microtransactions in, and I think most people would now agree that they would rather play the original CTR than the remake.
Well, yeah, but that's because they went and fucked it up. The game itself, though, was like vastly superior.
I would disagree. I had issues with it.
Oh, really? See, I know several people.
Controlled.
I have several people who are just like, this game is so good. It's such a good remake.
Yeah, I've heard there were a lot of issues with the actual mechanics. I'm almost wondering if the system you played on mattered for that, but I have no idea because I haven't played it because I would rather just have the original and not support their nonsense.
Their bullshit.
I mean, it was the PS4 remake that I played.
I mean, that's probably the one that would be the best.
Most of my play on the original was originally on the PS1 and then on the PS3, both of which I've put like a huge amount of time into in that original game. And
yeah, I mean,
when you've kind of like played a game so much, you can immediately tell when something's off.
Yeah.
And I just felt straight away with that remake that like this doesn't handle the same. I mean, it's similar, but I know for a fact that playing that original, I can easily get into kind of like first place in the first couple of matches on normal difficulty. And I was struggling to kind of like place in the remake, even when I put it on easy. And it's like I know this game like the back of my hand, so something is different here.
Well, and that's what I was going is like whenever you do a remake, it's always kind of a risky move because you're trying to please. You're making a remake mostly for the people who played it before.
Mm-hmm.
You're bringing a game to their new console with high fidelity graphics and all this good stuff that they've wanted. You're trying to present to them the game that they remember. You're trying to give them what they think the game was like, you're giving them a game how they perceived it when they were a kid.
Right.
You're not giving them the same game because they can always go back. A lot of these, most people can figure out a way to go back and play these games that they played when they were a kid. Whether it be emulators or snatching up an old console or, installing a workaround on your PC, whatever have you, there are ways it can take a little work, but you can play most of these old games that you played. So when you bring the game to them again, like you said, especially if this is something that you played lots and lots of, if it isn't right, you're going to know it's not right. And on top of that, if you haven't given the right care to how you're going to represent it graphically, then that's going to be off-putting to these older players as well. Now, as far as capturing the attention of players who have never played these games before, you have to make sure that you're not holding on too hard to these older games and the old presentation and the old mechanics in some cases, because sometimes it's just those old games were kind of broken. And we don't really remember that too much when we were kids. But you go back to them, you're like, wow, this game did not age well. So if they're fixed properly, remakes can be like a breath of fresh air to some of these old games that make them excellent.
I can't fault the graphical updates that they made to CTR. It looks gorgeous. The remaster looks gorgeous, but just the underlying mechanics that
yeah, something changed and it wasn't right.
Yeah,
and it changed in the wrong way. And that's why remakes tend to be kind of a gamble, because you are trying to balance between new players and old players, and you want to give these players what they want, but sometimes even they don't know what they want. Sometimes we don't know what we want out of a remake.
Right.
We think we know, but we don't actually, which is why I have a wall of consoles and a shelf packed with old games. Because I know sometimes when a remake comes out, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to pick that up and it's going to be great. And other times it's like, I don't know, maybe it won't be good. Which is why sometimes you just move into, you just run into reboot scenarios where they're just like, we're just going to take this IP that you love and we're going to try it again. And that honestly tends to be safer. Because even if you lose some of the people who are like, I don't like I liked the old one, I don't like the new one, you're probably going to capture a lot of newer players who are going to be like, wow, this is great.
I mean, hell, it's worked for Final Fantasy for 35 years.
It's true. I mean, yeah, the kings of re-releases has been Nintendo, but as per one game, or as per a Focus game, Square has been heavy on the re-releases and remakes, and not just with Final Fantasy. Obviously, they've been going ham with the mana titles, much to Steven's pleasure.
Yep, remakes and re-releases ahoy.
They've been doing that. They've released quite a few Final Fantasy titles, and Kingdom Hearts got quite a few re-releases in a very short amount of time. Because it originally started out with they did Kingdom Hearts, and then they did Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which is what we're going to talk about. And then it got its own remake on PlayStation 2 several years later.
Oh, it goes even deeper than that. So, the first Kingdom Hearts got a re-release in Japan called Kingdom Hearts Final Mix that included content that had been exclusive to the American version and new content that was exclusive to that version. So Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 both got that treatment. The final mix versions of those were not seen outside of Japan until the 1.5 and 2.5 HD remixes. So, like, when people complain about, Kingdom Hearts 3 has DLC, it's like, well, they've all kind of had it. It's just DLC didn't exist in 2005.
It's true. That is one of those things where it didn't exist, and what we had instead was expansions.
Right. So, Kingdom Hearts has always done this, re-release, remaster. Like, they've been doing this from the very beginning. But the most notable of the remake remaster train is Chain of Memories, because Chain of Memories was a Game Boy Advance game in 2004. And in 2007 was remade for the PS2. And originally we weren't supposed to get this one. Originally it was packaged with Kingdom Hearts 2 Final Mix as a bonus. And then they said, well, we could sell this outside of Japan as a standalone. And that's what we got. And then when it came time for the 1.5 HD remix, that's the version of Chain of Memories that we got because it was the easiest one to port onto the PS3 and, remaster and upgrade the graphics.
I would also like to interject really quick that the names Final Mix have not aged well with the release of 1.5, 2.5, and 2.8.
It is still the final version of that game. Like, there's not exclusive content to the... Like, Final Mix as a concept existed. It's just that we never got them. So there really isn't new content in the re-releases. It's just stuff we didn't see before.
And then you got, now 3 came out. Like I said, they're, Hey, wait a minute. Wait. Did 2.8 have the mobile games in it?
So 2.8 was Dream Drop Distance from the 3DS. Yeah. 0.2 Birth by Sleep, which is like an interquel, and then it has Kingdom Hearts Key back cover, which is a movie of scenes dealing with the mobile game.
Oh, okay, that's what you were talking about with the movie. Okay,
right, but some of those scenes weren't seen by the player in the mobile game, so still some actual new content there. But yeah, so Kingdom Hearts has been on this crap for a long time, and that's why I wanted to talk about Chain of Memories, because it gives us the most to talk about in terms of, it's had both a remake and a remaster with the PS3 and then PS4 upgrade.
I don't own Kingdom Hearts games, so I wasn't able to play the new one or play Chain of Memories. I did play Chain of Memories back on Game Boy Advance. And I have to say that it might be the only Kingdom Hearts game that I liked.
Really?
Dead serious. And I think it was because it was a little goofy with the whole kind of deck building operation, calling in your assists and all that for all your and all that jazz. I was kind of into that. And also, basically, you couldn't put much on a Game Boy Advance that I didn't like.
That's very interesting because, like, Chain of Memories it's one of the most divisive games in the series. Like, the two that catch the most heat from the fandom are Chain of Memories and Recoded. And Dream Drop Distance to a lesser extent, but Recoded introduces a lot of stuff that people don't like just because it takes some of the nonsense up to 11. Chain of Memories has a very good story, but a lot of people are turned off by the card mechanics.
I'm gonna stop you right there. Considering it's Disney characters in Final Fantasyville cruising across the multiverse, the game starts at 11.
That's fair.
Those games are 11 incarnate.
But so Chain of Memories has a pretty good story, and a story that you kind of need going into Kingdom Hearts 2, but a lot of people are turned off by the card mechanics because, like, at the time they would not have been able to put the Final Fantasy, the Kingdom Hearts console experience on the Game Boy Advance. Like, it's just
Oh,
not.
absolutely not.
It's not feasible.
And that's what's kind of crazy is you look at it and you go, oh, this was an experimental thing. It's like it was a product of its time.
Yeah.
They had hardware limitations, so they tried to bring in the experience a different way. And they brought in an experience, that's for sure.
I don't hate Chain of Memories as much as a lot of people because, like, you know, it's there's just enough there to work with. Like, you know, for Sora's story, you've got the deck building aspect. You've got, you know, all the different stuff you can equip. You can arrange your deck in certain ways. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff there. And Riku's story has the duel mechanic, which works very well. And that's another thing, is it was almost 2 games in one, because you play through Sora's story and go through all of this, and then there's a whole nother side of it where you're playing as Riku in the same location doing other stuff. And I mean, like I said, both stories are pretty good, but the cards set people off. Like, it really bothers people with the card combat.
Yeah, I really struggled with it. Like, I did look at some footage of the GBA version, and I think that probably would have been preferable to me, because in this remake, you kind of like, you've got the cards to do your damage, but you're also having to kind of like jump around, dodge attacks, lock onto the enemies, make sure you're near them, as well as keeping an eye on your cards, keeping an eye on your combos, keeping your eye on your enemies' cards. For me, it was just too much. I ended up just spamming the attack, and like whatever cards came up, that was the attack I did. There was kind of like no strategy to it. I was just button mashing essentially. And
to be fair, when I was 14, that's mostly how I got through it too.
Yeah, I mean, and you can build entire strategies around exactly that.
But it felt really awkward for me, trying to do it in that kind of way with the cards.
Well, and honestly, just kind of the way that, because there's the deck building arrangement, is you get to a point where it's like you're trying to play Uno with a gun pointed at your head, and you just start, like, even if you have a well built deck, I don't have enough focus where it's just like, yeah, no, I'm not going to plot out this entire fight for what I'm going to do. I'm sure like speedrunners and high tier players of that game have it down to a science. But for me, it's just like, nope, I know this is good, I know this is good, and I can fill in gaps here, and now mash.
Right. So, like, you know, you're going up against a guy that uses a lot of ice. So, you know, you can load up, you know, fire cards and set them up for special fire attacks. But, like, you have to get into the nitty gritty of it and you have to really have come to grips with how to move through your deck. And, like, it can be engaging, but, like, I almost feel like it works better if, I don't know, like it really has to hit something for you. Like, you know, like you said, Matt, if you've got too much to keep track of and you're not used to that, you're not good at that, this, you know, Rechain is going to be a pain in the butt because there's so many elements to worry about. And then there are drawbacks to the GBA version. Like, for example, you can set up to 3 cards in what's called a sleight, and it's like the values get added together and you get a bigger number. But in the Game Boy Advance version, once you put a card up into that, you can't remove it. Like, it is locked in. So if you make a mistake and put them in the wrong order, you're just out of luck on that. Whereas in Rechain, you can just tap the trigger and reset the cards you've stocked for that.
It was just trying to do all that in kind of like real time. I was struggling with because my brain couldn't keep up with it. I kind of feel if it was turn based, it would have been a lot more enjoyable.
And you're probably right on that.
Where you have your deck, they have their deck, and you just kind of like trying to do it like that.
Honestly, it probably would have been better that way, and I don't even like turn-based.
And then the the big swerve is when you get to Riku's story, you can't set up Riku's deck. Like when Riku goes into a world, he's given a set deck to work with, and that's what you have. You can't even rearrange. You can't even put the cards in a different order. So that adds a whole nother wrinkle to it. But Riku also has the duel system where if you throw the same card as the enemy, the same number card as the enemy, you can bring up a thing where it's basically a miniaturized version of it where they throw a card. If you throw equal or higher, you beat it, and you beat it like three to five times and get a special attack. You can just spam your entire deck for that and usually get through, which is honestly how you beat some of the harder bosses. Because like, there's a world where none of Riku's cards are over 5, and that's not ideal for this kind of game. So they introduced a lot of stuff, and then, towards the end of the game, they figure, okay, you've probably come to grips with this if you've gotten through Sora's story. Now we're going to give you a slightly different spin on it with Riku's. And, some people like it, some people hate it. It all depends on the person. And that, it's kind of the story of the game. Like, either people love it or they absolutely hate it. Most people hate it.
Speaking of stories, I never did pay attention to the story because the story in Kingdom Hearts as a whole has always been just so royally what the fuck is going on that even when I was playing it, I didn't bother.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running around Yu-Gi-Oh! Dueling people, basically. Only violently.
To like prepare for playing this, I actually watched the whole of the Kingdom Hearts theater mode for the first game.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched all the cutscenes, which is long as shit.
Yes.
And most of that kind of made sense. But there's a thing that Nomura does with a lot of his storytelling, and he'll set up mysteries that won't get explained for years. And it can leave you kind of like unsatisfied with the story. It's like if you're confused about a plot point for several years until it gets resolved. It's kind of like with J.J. Abrams and Lost, setting up these mysteries, and you're just left with no answers to them for a very, very long time. And more stuff keeps getting added into it, and it ends up getting like so convoluted that a lot of people will just switch off from the story. Like Ryan said, he couldn't follow the story, and I can't really blame him for that.
I also had never played Kingdom Hearts before then, so if there was a tie-in, I was completely lost.
But the theater mode of 1 does generally make sense.
Mm.
But then Rechain of Memories hits you with a curveball. With these cloaked black figures, you don't know who they are, you don't know what they're trying to do, and it just ends up becoming painful to kind of think about and try and like work out the story.
The big thing about Kingdom Hearts, and this is something that, people have been having to deal with for years and years, is the games are meant to be experienced because of the way they were released. They are designed to be experienced in that order without skipping any. And because they released on all these different systems that some people didn't have, a lot of people, if someone had a PS2, they may not have had a Game Boy Advance. So you play Kingdom Hearts 1, you play Kingdom Hearts 2, all of a sudden you're confused because there's super important stuff in Chain of Memories that you don't get. Or
yeah, I mean, like Rechain of Memories literally starts with the same cutscene that Kingdom Hearts 1 ended with.
Yes.
With them chasing Pluto.
Yes. So the biggest problem with Kingdom Hearts is it's not necessarily that complex. Like it's not super hard to understand if you experience it all. It's just a lot to remember. And if you skip something, that's where the confusion starts to come in. And then they do things like throw a prequel at you, it's like, okay, well, who is this old man, and why is he doing that with his hands? Like, you get like Nomura loves himself a good swerve, and he also likes to be like, aha, this seemingly innocuous thing was really this the whole time. So that's where a lot of the problem comes in. Is a lot of it is, you need to experience everything, which is much easier now than it was, 15 years ago, and you just got to keep up with it, which is difficult to do. And Nomura just likes to do some weird stuff. I mean, at this point, with all the retcons, he's basically made the original Kingdom Hearts almost non-canon. Like it happened, but a lot of the concepts introduced in it are no longer the way they were presented in that game.
Which just adds more confusion.
Yeah.
I did actually have one question about Kingdom Hearts 1, though, actually. Outside of the playable characters, how come Beast was the only one who was able to traverse worlds?
So the in-canon explanation for that is that Beast had such a strong heart and was so angry and so determined that he managed to brute force his way through the darkness. That is the literal in-canon explanation. Is
that sounds like a cop-out, because someone was like, oh, what if Beast was here too? And then they went, but he can't. And they went, oh, but what if he could?
What if he was big mad, though?
Then he is big mad. Beast is big mad.
Like that is literally the canon explanation, that he had such a strong heart and so much determination to save Belle that he managed to brute force his way through the darkness.
That's just straight up. That's just Doom explanation there. Man too angry to die.
Yeah. And sometimes he just pulls out something like that. And, you get things like that story from Kyrie's grandmother in the first game about, the world was light, and then, darkness overtook the world and destroyed it. And then the light was reborn from the hearts of children. Like, that becomes, like, that story is basically the story of the mobile game. Like, that's basically the entirety of the mobile game, is those events happening. Like, he takes small innocuous things and makes them huge later on.
It's hard to tell if it's genius or just actually like a lack of, is he a genius or is he crazy and it's taking up for a lack of writing talent? Right. Like, it's just it's just wacky enough to come off as brilliant, like some Hideo Kojima shit.
Yeah.
Where
that's
just
the other thing I've said.
I don't know if you're smart. I think you're just loopy enough to make it work.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, is people are like, oh, Kingdom Hearts is so hard to understand. It's like, but y'all understand Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. The Metal Gear Solid is just a big clusterfuck through and through.
Yeah. But so we've gotten super off track, but with Chain of Memories, I think both versions are worth playing. I think it's definitely worth checking out both, because some people are going to like one better, are going to like the Game Boy Advance version better. Some people are going to like the PS2 version better. It all depends on what you're more comfortable with and, what feels better for you.
Well, and I was watching my friend play on the Rechain. This was a couple years ago now. I was watching him play Rechain, and the game is beautiful. Like, it looks great.
Well, I mean, that was one of the things about the Game Boy Advance version, is, like, for the time, it was one of the best looking Game Boy Advance games out there. Like, it had a straight, like, that cutscene that Matt mentioned where they're chasing Pluto, that was in the Game Boy Advance version.
Yeah.
They straight dropped a cutscene from the PS2 game into the Game Boy Advance game. And it worked fine. Like, it worked fine.
Well, and even the gameplay, like being the semi-isometric running around, they made sure that looked good too for the Game Boy Advance. They had nice detailed sprites. The motion was pretty fluid. They didn't hold back on developing the game at all.
Yeah, like it was super well done. And the team that developed it went on to make The World Ends With You, because the card combat in Chain of Memories was actually the inspiration for World Ends With You, even though that ended up being very different.
Not card combat. Remember, inspired is not the same as based on a true story.
Right. Because originally it was going to be much more like Chain of Memories, and they're like, yeah, but we could do this though.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I think it still has value, and it's a good example of remake versus remaster, because the GBA to PS2 is a full remake where they added new content, they changed some things to make them better fit the canon. And like the Rechain is considered the definitive version of the game. It is considered the canon, version to experience. Right. And then we got the PS3 version on 1.5 Remix, which is basically the same thing, but with a little bit more extra content. There's I don't think there's any new cutscenes, but there's extra cards you can get based on the characters. And if you have a completed save from the 358 Days movie on the PS3, you can get extra cards from that. So I think it's a good example of remake and remaster, all bundled into one. But yeah, they touched things up, made it fit better with the canon. If the card battle put somebody off, I would still recommend at least watching the theater mode for it, because the story is worth watching, and it is interesting and important for the rest of the series, because like there's stuff from Chain of Memories that shows up in 3. So it's necessary, but one of the most divisive, just because of how much the gameplay can put some people off.
It wasn't just combat as well. Like map traversal was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, so some of those rooms are a pain in the butt, and like how with Sword you have some of the bounty cards where you just you open a room and it's just a treasure chest in there, and you kind of get a little bit of a break. Riku doesn't have those because he doesn't get additional cards, so Riku only has either combat or save point. So yeah, the map cards, like I like the concept, but in practice it gets to be kind of a pain in the butt, especially when there's so many enemies in those rooms. Like you got to fight so many enemies. I think if it wasn't as grindy as it is, if it didn't have as much combat, it might not come off as poorly. I think it's just because there's so much of it that people get tired of it.
Well, it wasn't the amount of combat that put me off. It was just the style of it.
Well, yeah, but like what I'm saying is, even for someone like me that kind of enjoys the combat and enjoys the strategy of setting up the deck and everything, the sheer amount of it gets tedious after a certain point.
Yeah, which is a shame because it does look nice and it does have, like you say, important story elements in it.
Mm-hmm. I recommend the game, and if it's not your thing and you just want to watch the cutscenes, that's totally fine. Like, the story is still meaningful. The story still lands well. So, I mean, especially if you're going to go through the series, you kind of need it. But I do recommend the game. The story differences aren't that much from the Game Boy Advance to the PS2. There's a couple of things. The only ones that are somewhat major are in Riku's story, but I mean it's all easy enough to find.
A shining example of remake and remaster.
Whilst I personally didn't enjoy the game, I do support Nomura's madness, even though I do think he probably needs an editor.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, he just needs someone with a newspaper to smack him on the nose and say, no.
Stop it! You know what it is? The writing mechanic is it called the gun on the wall? Where you don't mention that if you're describing a room, you don't mention that there's a gun on the wall unless that gun's going to be used later.
Right.
He fills the walls with guns, and then eventually, later, he comes back to it.
Like, but this gun was the most special of all.
Even if it's games later, he comes back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with Nomura, not only would the gun have its own game, the bullets would have offshoots of that game.
Offshoots.
I mean, there is a way to be super weird and also fairly coherent. I mean, Yoko Taro's does some really weird shit, but his games kind of make sense.
That's a very good point. It gets even worse because people know Tetsuya Nomura was originally slated to direct Final Fantasy Versus 13, and obviously that never happened. It became 15 and all that, and then in Kingdom Hearts 3 we get a character that looks a whole lot like Noctis, and there was I don't remember if it was a trailer for Remind or if it was a video after. I think it's a video at the end of the Remind DLC. That's basically just the original trailer for Versus 13, implying that those elements are now going to be in Kingdom Hearts as opposed to Final Fantasy. It's like, oh my god.
Implying that he got his way.
So apparently he's still bitter about that.
Well, I think that covers our remake remaster. Take a quick break, and then we can come back and talk about a reboot.
Okay, so we mentioned at the start that this episode was going to be about remakes and remasters, and because of a mistake I made, it's also about reboots, because I suggested Tomb Raider from 2013 because I actually thought that was a remake of the original game, and it turned out to not be a remake. It's actually a complete reboot of the series. So we're also covering reboots now in this episode. Tomb Raider obviously has quite a long storied history, starting out on the PS1, and there have been so many Tomb Raider games over the years, most of which released to critical acclaim. And in 2013, we got a complete reboot of the series with a new writer, Rhiannon Pratchett, and it just updates everything. It's essentially, it's like a crossover into a lot of genres, really. It's like a puzzle, platformer, action, shooter, collectathon hybrid. It is a lot of things. And luckily, it does all of those things pretty well. Mm-hmm. I was actually really disappointed when I played it that I had waited 8 years to actually get around to it. I've had it on PC for quite a long time, but when I knew that we were going to be playing it for this, I went onto PlayStation Network, and it was less than £3 on PS4. And that is an absolute bargain for what is actually a really, really solid game. It's very much story-based. It's not like the original in that you're kind of dual-wielding pistols at tigers and dinosaurs. It does bring in some of the supernatural elements that the earlier games had, but in general, it is kind of a lot more grounded and a lot more realistic, to the point where the supernatural elements almost feel out of place, but it honestly didn't take away from my enjoyment of the game. I ended up actually completing it 100%, going through each area and getting all of the collectibles, all of the stories, all of the unlocks and stuff like that. And the only thing that stopped me from getting platinum trophies on PS4 is the fact that a lot of those trophies are tied to multiplayer and no one's playing the multiplayer.
Because fuck multiplayer.
I didn't even know that game had multiplayer.
Yeah,
It shouldn't.
And plus, it's like way old as well, so a lot of people aren't playing it. But it was strong enough to get 2 sequels as well, both of which have been on PS Plus in the past. So I'm definitely going to get around to them. But what did you guys think about Tomb Raider?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I had a lot of fun with it. It seemed like right up my alley in terms of like having the collectibles and the gameplay feeling good. I'm somebody that doesn't mind QuickTime events, so that that element didn't bother me. What was interesting for me is that my only experience with Tomb Raider previous to that was on an original PlayStation demo disc.
Me too.
Where I had a demo of the first game, and about the only thing that happens in that is you fight some kind of large cat and then like walk around some area. So like that was my only experience with Tomb Raider going into this, and I was very, very impressed with it. I thought it was very good.
Yeah, I had only played that exact same demo 20 odd years ago on the PS1.
The red demo disc?
I don't remember. I think it was a magazine cover mount.
Okay. I know it had like, I want to say it had like 20 different demos on it, ranging from like Tomb Raider to IQ to Parappa the Rapper. Like, this is a wide variety of PS1 demos.
It's a very cinematic game. I was quite surprised by the quality of the cinematics and the story, and I'm glad that they kind of like brought on a female writer to kind of like the early games. You can very much accuse them of including a lot of kind of like male gaze aspects to it. Laura had very large, or albeit triangular boobs in the early games. She was even on the cover of Playboy once.
Oh God, I
like
forgot about that.
An animated version, and a lot of those early games did kind of like sexualize her a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And I think this reboot having a female writer, I think that kind of like helped the story because they don't sexualize Laura in any way. There is one guy that assaults her at one point in that kind of way, and she kills him like pretty quickly. Apart from that, there isn't really any more sexualization of the female characters, and it's just a story about Lara being a badass, really,
and becoming the Lara Croft that people know so well.
There is a little bit of a disconnect, kind of, because once she does kill that guy, which is like the first guy that she kills, she's really torn up about it, and then for the rest of the game, she just turns into a murder hobo.
All right, so
I wanted to say that because, like, the whole thing is just like it reminds me of Nathan Drake from Uncharted, where it's just like, oh, well, there's the bad guys here, and then you just murder everything.
I actually really wanted to talk about this because, like, I remember the talk about that scene back then, and being like, oh, it's so weird that she freaks out having to kill one person and then just mows people down. When you watch that scene, I don't think that freak out is at having to kill someone. I think that freak out is the holy shit, I actually survived that.
Well, I think her exact words were, Roth was talking to her about the death, and she's like, I'm surprised at how easy it was. I think her exact words, which must be true because she then goes on to kill hundreds.
Yeah, you just start murdering everybody. And I remember my brother, when he played through, he made the same comment of just like, oh, it's a big deal, and then, well, it's not that big of a deal.
Because like I was going based on like that scream she lets out right after, and like
that's the adrenaline.
I think that is just the adrenaline and the holy fuck, what the hell did I just go through? I don't know. I feel like it's not that much of an oversight
But then when she tastes the
Once she tastes blood,
when she tastes the thrill of murder, she has to have more of it.
I know, but that's just a problem with the genre.
Lara Croft Tomb Raider, more like Lara Croft Adrenaline Junkie.
Tomb filler.
No. Tomb. See, I didn't really get into the remake or the reboot because I started it up. It was free on Games with Gold years and years and years ago. I don't even think I had an Xbox One when it came with Games with Gold.
Yeah, it was late 2015 because it was actually the first one I ever downloaded for Games with Gold.
And I sat down and I was like, I'm going to play this because my brother is recommending it. He's playing it and he's recommending it, and I'm going to play it. And I sat down to play it, and I got hit with an absurdly long cutscene to start the game off.
Yeah, that does happen.
And I was just like, oh my god, what is going on? And it's going, and it's going, and it's going, and I'm getting frustrated because I want to play this game. And then it's like, time to play the game. So I play the game, spoiler alerts, I fall down a hole, and I get impaled, and I survive. So right now, for this game that's trying to pitch itself as maybe a little bit more believable, immediately just blows my suspension of disbelief out of the water. And I'm like, okay, but this is okay. So I hobble around and figure out what's going on and move on to the room, and then I get hit with another cutscene after this disgustingly long cutscene, followed by 2 minutes of gameplay, and I literally shut it off at that point. When the cutscene fired, the second one, I shut it off. I literally turned my Xbox off.
Yeah, a lot of that gameplay as well is actually quick time events at the start of the game. Because when I played it originally, like I said, I've had it on PC for years, and I did try playing it before, and I had pretty much the same experience. Long cutscene, followed by quick time event, followed by another cutscene, followed by another quick time event. That's how the game starts. And I thought to myself, I'm really not into a quick time kind of video game. That's what I thought the whole game would be, which it isn't. Immediately after that point, it turns into like a platformer, essentially, and that is why I was put off in the past. But once you get over that hurdle, it does open out into kind of like a proper platform shooter, like really solid experience. It just doesn't start well.
And that's fair. I mean, like I'm someone who's very generous with that kind of thing. Like, I'll usually give a game a lot longer than most people to grab me. I'm also the type of person that once I get any part of a story, I'm like, I kind of want to see the rest of this. I kind of want to know what happens.
Right. Maybe that was the other problem, is it didn't engage me super hard. With the cutscene. It's just like, okay, it's coming in, ship, storm, that all this stuff coming on. You're setting up, and it wasn't, it didn't grab me. However, like I said, my brother did play it, and he did stream it. And that, I did watch through a lot of that, and I did appreciate what I saw, and then also, just tons of murder. But I felt some of the puzzles in the game, from what I witnessed, were just obtuse enough to be not frustrating, but make you stop, versus like, oh yeah, gotta move a thing right here, and boom, unlock the area. It's like, they was a little bit more like, one of them had a raft, and you had to move gas cans around, which brought in an interesting little physics puzzle that was not, they didn't lead up to that with anything.
The ironic thing about the game, in Tomb Raider, the tomb raiding is the weakest aspect.
Yeah, I know. There isn't a whole lot of tombs at all. It's mostly just murder simulator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's probably about half a dozen tombs. There's not a hell of a lot. There's probably a bit more than that. But I didn't find that aspect of it as fun. A few of them I just ended up looking up a guide, because it's just a puzzle that you just work out. It's like there's no real action in those parts. And the puzzles, A couple of them were really simple. A couple of them were really obtuse. And it wasn't really paced well in terms of like the teams you come across. Like you would have a really easy one, then a really hard one, then going back to a really easy one. And the fact that they were optional as well in a game called Tomb Raider was actually a little bit odd. But I mean, I wouldn't say the tomb raiding itself is bad. It just wasn't as good as other aspects of the game.
No, I can again, because I didn't play it. I can agree with that as much as I can. My experience is limited.
And they have no relevance to the story at all.
Well, I mean, yeah, they just exist.
Yeah.
And that was also my complaint about one of the collectibles as well, because one of the collectibles is GPS caches. In fact, most of the collectibles GPS caches, there's more of them than any notes and relics. They're really difficult to see. They're really hard to find. And there is no story attached to them at all. Like, the notes and the relics give you some really interesting backstory and give a lot of nuance to both the characters and the environment that you're in. The GPS caches are just nothing. They are there to be collected. And I felt, if you look at a game as a whole and say, if you took this one bit out, it wouldn't affect the game at all, then it probably shouldn't have been put in the game.
Yeah.
I would completely remove the GPS caches from the game and it wouldn't affect anything at all.
Yeah, they were pretty pointless.
They were there for the sake of being there, and not because they were properly integrated. There was like, what if we sprinkled some fairy dust around the game and called it a day?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm all about collectibles, but, you know, the collectibles I like are the ones like the notes you find and the diary entries and stuff. Like, because that stuff adds to the world, and that's really interesting to me.
If the GPS caches just gave, like, a couple sentences about maybe the person who dropped it there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but well, I mean, I don't even know what GPS caches are. Like, I know what GPS is, but what is a GPS cache?
Well, isn't it supposed to be like a geocache type thing?
Yeah, it's basically geocache.
Which is basically...
I don't know what that is.
Geocaching was a trend back in the early 2010s, where you'd use your phone to track down locations and you'd find a thing that somebody had hidden or marked. Geocaching was huge about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I never got into it. I thought about it, but the applications were like $20-$30, and I was like, no, not paying that much for a phone app.
I mean, hell, even before that, back in the mid 2000s, there were like specific devices you could use for it. But yeah, it was a big deal. It's just like, you know, finding, like you said, a thing that someone had hidden, and was a big deal for a while. And I guess this was the tail end of that. But yeah, it's not a whole lot of point. Just, you know, kind of a vague reference to something, I suppose.
Everything else in the game was done fantastically. Like, how far did you actually get, Stephen?
I got to the radio tower. I did that and then came down from it, and I think that's where I stopped.
The story does go in some wacky places. I mean, I won't spoil where it kind of like ends up, but it is consistent. The story is really well paced. The action sequences are really well paced within that and are kind of like fun to complete. The gunplay is really good because you've got kind of like a slight lock on with the weapons, or you can kind of like zoom in and kind of like snipe people with your bow and stuff like that from afar. But if you are finding yourself in a place surrounded by enemies, it's satisfying to just switch between your weapons, and like you don't so much have to aim at each individual enemy because it will like auto aim. But there is still a challenge there when you're like surrounded by people and you've got to work out which one do you want to take out first and stuff like that. So it doesn't completely do away with the strategy, but you do feel very powerful. It is a power fantasy kind of thing in terms of the gunplay. I would have liked to have seen more boss fights. There's one probably about 2/3 of the way through the game. There's one right at the end, which isn't actually the final boss. The final boss is actually a quick time cutscene, or a quick time event, rather. But there is a boss, like a mini boss just before that, which does actually have actual tactics that you need to look out for. And I wish there had been more of that, because there is literally just like pretty much 2 bosses.
Mm-hmm.
Well, considering that they didn't go super deep in on like the supernatural cray stuff.
Well, they do to a fair extent.
See, I didn't get to watch the entire game. I might have missed out on some of those really wacky stuff. Should have had more dinosaurs shooting raptors for some reason. I have so limited thoughts on this game. I will say that it was pretty as hell, especially for 2013.
I'm not entirely sure how it looked in 2013 because I played the PS4 version.
Right, you played the. It still looked really good.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, at that time, you're now kind of at the you're approaching end of life of the 360 and PS3.
Right.
So they're at a point there where the hardware is not hiding anything from them anymore.
Yeah. They really knew what they were doing
In
terms of making.
Like this game might be starting to brush into the category of like hardware pushers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where they're really maxing it out as much as they can, just squeezing every last drop.
Yeah.
Which is always fun to see. When you see a game that's on like a previous gen, you look at that and you go like, wow, that looks really good. And then you look at new gen, you're like, wow, that's actually super, super close.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean when they do it half-assed, because obviously like Grand Theft Auto was super half-assed about that. Grand Theft Auto 5. They didn't put a lot of work into the Xbox One port of GTA 5. They didn't need to. They increased the draw distance and like improved the lighting a little bit and called it a day.
I mean, look, they don't have to do anything with that. All they have to do is stick it inside another box and people will buy it.
Dude, but like for real, I know this is a quick sidetrack here, but everybody makes jokes about Skyrim being released on this, that, and the other and getting so many releases.
GTA 5 is the
but
worst
GTA
offender.
5 just exists. And
Yeah,
it just keeps going.
There's a reason that it was the very first thing in the PS5 reveal.
And
Like,
I don't think that's something to shit on. I think that just means they made a game that was good enough that people are happy to keep playing it.
It's the most successful entertainment product ever made.
yeah.
Like that's not overblowing it. It is literally the most successful product out of any games, movies, music, books. GTA 5 has made more money than any of them.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
I mean,
But that's just
I like you lead in this. You lead in with all of that, and then just I didn't like it.
GTA is not really my thing. I've never played it, but it just does the concept doesn't appeal to me that much. But yeah, I think Doom still has it beat on sheer number of things that it's been released on. But Doom being released on stuff has also become so much of a joke that people are continuing to find ways to put it on stuff. Like, this is just a product that's been released a lot.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of those games that from that, end of one, beginning of the next, tend to have that where they manage to get as much as they can out of that system or that engine, and you can get some good stuff out of it as a result.
yeah, like The Last of Us, which is another game I don't really like. It looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
And that was also released kind of like at the end of the PS3 life cycle.
Yeah. Kingdom Hearts 2 was released, I think, a year before the PS3 came out. And, even the original still looks pretty good. It's obviously a more cartoony art style. But as we've seen with things like Wind Waker, artistic direction can make something look good and continue to look good as opposed to something realistic. So,
Going back to Tomb Raider as well, like the sequels were PS4, so they were able to even more take advantage of the hardware. I've not actually played those two yet, but I do have them in my PS Plus library.
I did watch my brother play some Rise of the Tomb Raider, and that game is super fucking pretty.
Yeah, I don't have them. I think I've only got 2 Tomb Raider games. Yeah, so I have Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, which is a Games with Gold, and Tomb Raider Underworld, which is also Games with Gold. So, yeah, I don't have a ton of Tomb Raider stuff. I think I still have that demo disc kicking around downstairs, though.
I am really looking forward to getting into those. I know the next one takes place in Siberia.
Oh, that should be really interesting.
So that's kind of like more of a snowy kind of one, I believe.
Yeah, I'm super down for 2 more of this. And one of the things I really enjoyed about it is like there's in your upgrades menu, there's also a section for costumes, and there's like a whole bunch of costumes available from get-go that you can just put Lara in. And I like that I could, for example, put her in long sleeves and a vest when I was in the frickin' snow mountain base, and not just have her be in a tank top on top of a mountain.
Yeah. And none of them are kind of like sexualized as well, which is good.
And none of them really that absurd. I mean, yeah, it's kind of weird to have competition archery equipment, but it's not completely outside the realm of possibility.
Right. A little goofy, but it's not the most unrealistic thing that happens, so
right.
You can let it go.
But it's like, she totally could have found some of these clothes in this area. Like, it made sense, and I really appreciated that. And like you said, that they weren't super sexualized.
Well, because it doesn't make sense contextually. It doesn't make sense contextually for, like, oh, what's she going to wear? She's going to go adventuring in super skin-tight belly shirts and cropped shorts.
Yeah.
The only reason I brought that up is because, like, the earlier games did exactly that.
No, that exactly. They did exactly that. Right. And there was definitely uproar about Lara Croft's new design when the game came out because people are just horny for video game characters.
I think it's fine. And I also think the voice actress, Camilla Luddington, I think.
Yes.
I think she did a great job. I was unaware that that was her natural speaking voice because my wife watches a lot of Grey's Anatomy, and I was so used to hearing her on that without the accent that when I played the game, I was like, oh, wow, this sounds really natural. And my wife was like, yeah, that's because that's her actual voice.
Yeah, I think all of the voice acting in the games are really good.
Oh, yeah, I think it was well done. One of those things that, like, when it's good, it feels like a little thing that improves it, but when it's bad, it feels like it's a huge issue.
But overall, it looked great. It played great. I would say some of the stuff you do in that game, Lara is 100% dead.
Well, I mean, straight up in the beginning of the game, you are 100% dead. If not immediately, you're going to be dead in, like, a couple hours.
Well, she gets impaled in the side, it's not that big of a...
There are organs there, and that is a lot of internal bleeding.
Yeah.
She wraps herself up and calls it a day. It's like, I don't know about that.
But, like, throughout the game, she does, like, do impossibly long jumps and manages to grab on by her fingertips, like, on the next ledge. And...
Yeah.
I did love the big boxes that'll sometimes be swinging. If you start the jump while it's close enough and it swings out of range, she'll kind of hang in the air for a second and then just drift over to it. That was kind of amusing to me. But yeah, I definitely recommend this. You can get it for $20 on US Amazon, and that's the definitive edition on Xbox One.
Like I said, on PSN, it was less than £3 for me.
Was that like a sale price, or was that?
I'm assuming that was a sale price.
Let me take a look at.
But at this point, the game is
8 years.
8 years old.
The original is 8 years old. I don't know when
8 years
the PS4
old. So if you
version
can
came
find
out.
that one, you can find it pretty cheap. The PS4 version is still going to be pretty cheap.
Yeah,
that's pretty old now too. It's easily accessible, is the point.
And if you have had a PS Plus subscription for the past couple of years, then there's a good chance that you've got the sequels on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that Tomb Raider was on Game Pass for a while, but it's not anymore, I don't think. I haven't seen it. I flipped through to Game Pass a while back and I didn't see it.
But I'm looking on PlayStation Store now, and it's back up to normal price, and it's $15.99.
Okay. I mean, it's still not horrible.
No, and it is well worth it. It's not very often that I will go in and 100% complete a game.
Yeah.
But I went in, like, the only thing I didn't do is the multiplayer. I went in, I got all the relics, all the notes, all the GPS caches, fully upgraded all of my skills, all of the weapons. I did the whole thing. And for less than £3, that is insane value.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
That is a good deal. Thrifty video game shopping right there. Well, if that ties up Tomb Raider, then if we got nothing more to say on that, then we'll take a real quick pause and we'll wrap up. Well, I find it pretty interesting that remakes are still going on so strong. I always did. It was always funny because I always did view remakes as kind of a modern thing, but they're just not. Remakes and remasters are not even remotely new. I mean, Pong. When you look at something like Pong, it's been getting games for a long time. We've shown that Squeenix is the king of them, honestly, possibly even more than Nintendo. But I don't think they're a bad thing. I think at the end of the day that they're not a bad thing. Sometimes it's just a quick cash grab, and a shameless one at that. But in other ways, I think they're also important preservations of iconic series and games, and a way to move them forward, and so people can enjoy them. People can continue to enjoy them, and new generations can easily enjoy them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even like you said, with Square Enix, like when they put all but one of the 2D Final Fantasies on PS1, that was a way for people that had never played Final Fantasy II, people that didn't have an SNES or an NES, that was a way for them to experience the series. And, you can say what you want about those releases. I think their existence is ultimately a good thing.
Absolutely. I would not argue that statement at all. Even if those are considered possibly the worst re-releases of those games, it's not like they were bad. They just weren't as good.
Yeah.
And at least Nintendo has even if they aren't remaking and re-releasing and rebooting everything, they're making ways with like Switch Online and previous virtual consoles to keep these things accessible. Because even like people like us who collect these old games, this physical media, unfortunately, will not last forever.
Right.
It will degrade, it will break down, it will become unusable.
I mean, especially if we're talking about, some of this stuff is coming up on 35 or 40 years old. Like, it's not going to last.
It's not going to last. So even if some of these games that we get that are, remakes and remasters, even if it's not the same exact thing that we had when we were kids, I think it's close enough that it is. I think it's enough that we know, and it's enough for people to know where these franchises and these games came from.
Yeah, it is valuable.
It is still valuable, and sometimes they flop a little bit, but it's not that often. It really isn't that often.
Yeah, I mean, like, we don't necessarily need, the PS4 version of Last of Us, which was like, a year and a half after the game released.
Yeah, if that.
Like, we don't need stuff like that, but something like, Skyward Sword re-released, or Xenoblade Chronicles being released on Switch, like, taking something somebody might have missed and putting it on a much later system, or hell, like all the, like Final Fantasy 10 through 12 being on damn near everything now.
Yeah, and those were, 10 was PS2.
Yeah. 10 through 12 were all on PS2, and now they're on every modern system.
Now they're on every modern system. Yeah, exactly.
Well, apart from 11.
Well, apart from 11, but,
Well, no one cares about 11. Not anymore.
You would be surprised.
Apparently, I just never got into Final Fantasy quite enough to Well, also when 11 came out, I was living in Alaska without real internet. So
Yeah,
why would I be into Final Fantasy 11?
kind of a problem.
Kind of a problem. So I think there's enough remakes and remasters that we could revisit this topic again in the future, and maybe we will if we drop some really good remasters that are worth going into. But you know what? Until then, I think for now we'll just say goodbye, and thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Visit RetroOdysseyPodcast.com to find our latest episodes and all of our social media links. That isn't all that got released. That isn't all that got announced in the PlayStation. The word's gone out of my head.
State of play?
That isn't all that's been released. That Jesus fucking Christ.
Well, we know what to stick in the stinger after the show ends. Because that's just tripping over our own mouths.